Dom Tomato is unique in the world of parkour. He not only succeeds with some of the most iconic jumps in parkour's history, but with some of its most painful and dramatic bails. How does his body perform and survive such abuse? What unique biological and biomechanical factors allow him to do this? What psychological tools does he use to maintain confidence after bails? Today we're going to answer all of those questions with our special guest, Dom Tomato.
I always tell like random people that I'm not like good at the sport. I'm just really good at front flips and falling over.
Firstly, I'll talk about physical factors, and then I'll discuss the sports psychology of high performance. Okay, so the good. What is he doing so well physically, beyond the obvious things like his incredibly central, balanced, symmetrical resting position? He has some unique strengths that really show up in specific movements that he likes doing, so I'm going to break things down in terms of these movements and the specific biological and biomechanical factors within them. Takeoffs first. He is exceptionally forward through his takeoff position, and he's not collapsing at all through his head or his spine as he's doing this. He's nearly parallel to the ground by the time his feet leave the ground. This is ideal for dive fronts and flip precisions. 1/4 of his rotation is already done. Getting your weight forward in this way ensures he's going to be recruiting all of his posterior chain muscles through their ideal dynamic range. It's a really good way of getting distance. And this technique was used to great effect in long jump briefly before it was banned. You're going with your body's natural rotation in a jump rather than fighting it. And this is really Dom in a nutshell and plays perfectly into the next thing that he utilizes so well, gravity itself. He isn't afraid of it, and this is extra force for your jump if you can utilize it. And most other athletes tend to shy away from it because they're unable to handle its consequence, landing.
The stuff that I lean towards or look at as like the media challenges for me, often people don't want to do simply because they don't want to take the impact.
And I think this is where Dom shines the most. He may very well have the best plain and simple parkour roll in the sport, as well as some of the best bails. And to understand why this is, we need to think about what the purpose or function of a roll or bail actually is. Its goal is to disperse force impact over as large a period of time and a larger area of body as possible. The opposite of this is stopping, sustained impact at a single location. Dom is a master at dispersing his force, spreading it out through his entire body. He very rarely gets stuck. He's never square or clunky or lumpy. He's smooth, round, fluid, squishy through every single part of his body. This is helped by some fantastic genetic bendiness, see here, but bendiness alone is not enough to do this. This is a skill and it needs to be practiced a lot.
I just credit it to ice skating. Like I felt I was falling on the ice like from I guess age of 6 or 7, would have been trying jumps and falling a lot. Like average numbers, you'd be doing 50 jumps a session, you'd fall on more than half of them. So you're falling like 30 times on the ice, 3 to 5 times a day, sometimes, like 6 days a week. You'll learn how to fall over.
It's essential when trying to do this to maintain connection through your muscles. This isn't just them squishing into a heap with everything turning off. He's maintaining connection and support through a vast range of different joints throughout his body while simultaneously compressing down through them. This is definitely a nuanced skill. And what does it look like when Dom messes this up? See his famous Lion 25 jump for more info on this. But basically, if you get a single moment of sustained impact when you're dealing with forces like this, it's game over for whatever bit of the body ended up with that force. And this is why Dom is so largely resistant to injuries, because he's sharing that impact across his whole body. No single piece will be the thing that breaks in that chain. It's kind of going to be the whole thing or nothing. And there are very few people who do this well. Most of us have a chronic point which ends up with an uneven share of the load, and that becomes our failure point in movements, our bad knee or bad ankle, or whatever else it is that takes its unfair share of the weight. Biologically, he also has some great assets for rolls. His extremely broad shoulders and big back.
The shoulder joint thing, that's always been my theory about why like I lean towards rolls more than the average athlete. Is if you look at where my deltoid position starts and like structurally it is, the mobility of range I have there, I can like with its tail, when I hit my face, I also hit my shoulder on the ground.
Yeah.
So but like that. And like just simply having that shield there of structure, like if my shoulder was less broad, that's my face. The bigger and shellier your back, the more you're going to get that round shape that you can hit consistently. More surface area. Like people stunt fall to their back, so it's like essentially like you've got the most surface area to kind of if you do.
Dom is also surprisingly heavy for his height. It's because he has massive, robust joints with big bones. They don't break easily. Dom is built for this kind of thing.
I'm also super heavy framed. Like this might fascinate you, but the twins weigh like 78 last we spoke. I weigh 87 and I'm like smaller than them. It's so bad. I'm just so broad and dense that I just, yeah.
Small joints with small ligaments and small bones break easily. Dom does not have this problem. And there are also some things worth mentioning that Dom doesn't do so well biomechanically. Often, as he lands, his right hip travels too far back in space and his right glute doesn't fire very well, and his torso tends to follow this movement down to the right. Look at all of these bales. He's always falling to the right. This is no coincidence. And long term, this is going to cause problems because he's just not being central enough on some of these big landings. As well as that, Dom's right shoulder blade ends up in some weird positions. It's often too far around his body. This works very well for spins and rolls, but in situations like takeoffs, it acts as a bit of a hindrance, taking him off balance. It would be a lot easier if he kept that central. However, what I think is really interesting about all of this, and Dom in particular, is that I don't think his physiology, his biology, justifies his exceptional performance. I think Dom is probably closer to performing at his physical limit than any other athlete in parkour. And this is not just a once in a while thing, but consistently, day in, day out. That is super unusual by definition. How does he do this? What psychological tools is he using to get the most from his body? And what can we learn from him? I'm going to cover 3 areas: Dom's bales, his visualization, and his confidence. First, bales. I asked Dom what mental processes he goes through and how he recovers from a bad bale on a hard challenge, something that many athletes struggle to do. Bouncing back after you hit the ground is hard.
So the second I hit the rail wrong, I like instantly know what was wrong about it. I'm like, my hip was here, or my legs were here, I split my feet. But so if you fall, usually what I then just feel is like, especially if I'm just still feeling like the adrenaline over the pain, I'll kind of go straight back into calm down. And I know that I need to get it done quickly before my body starts to feel that pain. I'm not inhuman. I definitely feel the hits.
Yeah.
But in the moment of like adrenaline and focus, I usually can kind of click back into overdrive. You kind of do a quick assessment, like what's hurt. So maybe I slammed my hands, or I've slammed my hips, like you said, or I've like tweaked my ankle a little bit. I need to focus on doing exactly the same thing that I just did, but with the correction, and then making sure that I'm compensating for whatever, like if it's, my hands, I've just got to push slightly less aggressively or whatever. But again, you just lean into the moment. I think that's really how I get it done. It's like, I see it as a battle, and then like if the challenge takes something from me, like some skin or like a knock, like I gotta win. I've got to win, so I've got to get back, even if it's not like immediately, and somewhat conquer that.
What's happening here is something called cognitive appraisal. What did all that just happen mean? What's the story I'm telling myself? There is only one objective fact in this situation. A bale happened. And the average person, when faced with this, thinks, oh, this is too hard, or this is too dangerous. And if I continue, I'll be endangering myself. I shouldn't do it. And the emotions they experience are ones of fear and avoidance. Dom, on the other hand, thinks, I wasn't hurt that badly, and I learned some valuable info about this jump. This is actually the perfect situation to try again, and the emotions he's feeling are anticipation, excitement, focus, and challenge. The stories we tell ourselves define our response, and Dom is really good at telling himself good stories.
Because like most people I know, falling also like either builds fear or like is like a lesson where they're like, I don't want to do that again because of the fall.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't really seem to learn that. I'm like, fall means information, and then I can try the thing with more information next time, like if I'm hurt or I'm not hurt.
And this translates well into our next factor, confidence. The literature on this is super clear. Performance and confidence are directly linked, and they very easily form feedback loops. Positive experiences, success completing a challenge leads to more confidence, which leads to further successes in all kinds of different sports. And failure often leads to a loss of confidence, which then in turn leads to a lack of performance, and so on. And I'm sure most of us have felt something like this in our own training or just life, where one event can undermine our confidence and we can spiral downwards in a succession of less good performances. So to some extent, confidence is heritable, it's genetic. And if we look at Dom's family tree, we can see where some of that might have come from.
So my dad, when he was a teenager, he climbed up a mango tree one year to get a mango out of the tree, fell, got 50 stitches in his head. So the next year he was like, I'm going to climb the tree. climbs up the tree, tries to get a mango, falls out 50 stitches in his head.
What?
Then on the third year, you're like, oh, okay, obviously he gets smarter. No, tries the same thing, 50 stitches in his head, 3 years in a row, 150 stitches in his head from trying to get mangoes out of this tree. Like, he just didn't learn. He just was like, no, I want mangoes. And just like that simplicity of like, I've fallen before, but it doesn't affect me from doing it again. And even to the same extent, 3 times with the same grave consequence of splitting his head, but he's just like, oh yeah, probably just climb that tree again.
Crazy,
so I
man.
think there's something genetically kind of missing where I'm like, but like falling doesn't necessarily register as like a negative or like a like, you know, my brain doesn't go, oh, don't do that again. My brain goes, oh, you survived, so probably fine. I'd say like I've always been incredibly confident, like as a person, and also when it comes to movement, like even in ice skating, I was more willing to throw myself challenges. I put a hole in my leg learning how to backflip on the ice, like. So there's like a level of confidence that's like just inherently there, which means like even if I take a knock, I'm like, and also in saying that, that confidence is built every time you take a knock and you're not hurt. Or like you're like, sure, I came out safe. That builds that confidence that like I can go for stuff. Like I think that's really like the key factor there is I can go for things with the confidence that I'm going to fall and know that I'll be okay.
We weren't all born to send jumps, unfortunately, but this biological variability is probably good for the human race's safety overall. Now, if you aren't naturally confident like Dom, accumulating this is a doable process. Having past experiences of success to draw on are crucial, so slowly working your way through the progressions and using those as a resource to draw on when you face challenge is a really good way to go about this. However, there is one other important thing to consider. Being unconfident heading into a high consequence jump spells certain disaster.
Because I find a lot of the time when people send challenges, it's like bigger ones. Fear is one of the things that is the most detrimental. Hesitation.
Yeah.
That's which I just learned again over years of training. I think to like you're safest at committing 100%. If you commit at like 85, you're more likely to stick something out the way, or like, you know, it's the same principle of sticking 1 foot or 2 feet out of the wall. Right? Give it 100%, you're more likely, and especially with reactive falling, to come out safer than if I was to like hesitate in some way.
Unconfident movement is slow, hesitant, often with our weight too far back in space. This is the exact opposite of what is needed for a good takeoff. Remember our forward weight from earlier in the video? This is crucial for ensuring we have all of the good muscles in the game that are going to give us good performance and protect us from injury. Another key tool in Dom's arsenal is visualization. There's a clear body of research showing the correlation between sports performance and visualization, but especially when done in large quantities and when following specific guidelines. Small amounts occasionally don't make that much difference. Dom literally spent years visualizing the IMAX Kong front pre.
I'm there literally saying the words Kong front pre, Kong front pre. I'm trying to time it in my head with Kong front pre, Kong front. And then like when I'm walking around my friend's house, basically I'll try and envision the gap, and I will even purposefully exaggerate the gap in my head if I'm not there, so that it's like scarier than it is. Like when I arrive, I'm like, it's not as scary as I've been imagining it. Timing notes. The reason I say Kong front pre is because like I have all these things loaded for those words. So like the Kong actually is to do with like the spacing and the timing of the push. Yeah. And then the front is to do with the timing of the tuck and like the tightness of the tuck. So yeah, it's like just visualizing like the technical aspects that I need to do, and also visualizing me doing it well, right? Visualizing me doing it successfully is a huge factor. Like knowing that like when I do the visualization, I will see myself from POV spot and my feet go towards the object. And that simple will then override like the other fears of missing or whatever. Because you're like, no, if I flip and I put my feet there, or I jump and I put my feet there, or I jump and I catch it, like you get that one note that's going to really like at least make it as safe as possible.
Listening to him here, there's a few crucial things to understand. His visualizations are as realistic as possible. They're at the exact location, in real time, with the exact timings the movement requires from the first person point of view. You can check out professional F1 drivers doing the same here. The more realistic and accurate the visualization, the more impact it has on performance. However, in some ways, none of this is new to Dom. Did you get like formal training in visualization, or is that just something you've naturally like picked up?
So I went to see a sports psychologist from the age of 9 to 13.
Yep.
It was originally when I like qualified for the state championships for ice skating, but then I had my own social issues, family issues and that sort of thing that were also like affecting the sport. So yeah, we just worked on that sort of stuff. And I feel like that was one of the key things for me as a young adult, having 4 years of like specialized sports psychology for not only training, but like my general mental well-being.
Yeah.
From then when I found parkour, my whole like life switched on its head from being a social outcast and a misfit to someone who was so comfortable in their own skin and doing what they wanted to do.
So after all of this, you might think, hey, I want to be like Dom. But the thing is, I don't think it's hard for Dom to be Dom, but I think it'd be really hard for me to be Dom. People are weird like that. We're kind of only good at being ourselves.
Yeah, I just never really had the same mental barriers that other athletes had. My issue growing up was that I was more confident that I was good. So that the things look like people are like, oh, he's doing the craziest shit. But for me, I'm just working with my skills.
For Dom to push his physical limits day after day is fine for him, but I genuinely doubt whether or not I could do that. I suspect I might find myself exhausted, confidence depleted, and injured beyond belief, with my body unaccustomed to dealing with and handling the forces that Dom deals with on a daily basis. So what can we do to be like Dom?
Here's what you can't change. Here's just because they're free. And then here's like the stuff that goes along with that to make it more conceivable for the average person.
1, we can learn to disperse force like him, understand its aim, its goal, practice it like a skill, and grind it. Notice and understand our own unique parts in our movement where we get stuck and learn to work through them. 2, get forward on our takeoffs, like really forward, but in the right way, obviously. No leading that from a collapsed head. 3, employ some of the psychological skills that Dom is using. Psychologically, restructure your bails as information gathering. Visualize lots and precisely, and find ways and tools of maintaining and supporting your confidence throughout movement. And practice and use these skills often. They're just as important as any skill you might learn in parkour. I'd like to finish with one of my favorite stories about Dom. Back in the early 2010s, there were some front flips filmed for parkour videos that were faked. However, many people on the other side of the world, like me and Dom, had no idea. We just assumed it was all real. Not knowing what was possible, Dom defined his own reality through misunderstanding. He learned to do these massive dive fronts, thinking everyone else could already do them. However, when he got to Europe, to his surprise, no one else could.
I mean, yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit that I was fooled by it. I was just like, everyone who's professional. If you're professional, you can do it from above 5 meters onto concrete. Look, I've seen it everywhere.
What we imagine to be possible greatly impacts our ability to move. 5 years ago, most of the flip precisions that are being done now were seen as completely impossible. And I think Dom has probably been one of the biggest innovators in this area as well. I think the biggest limitations for our sport are what we imagine to be impossible. Be like Dom, challenge your perceptions, change your stories, send it with confidence, but be safe out there, folks. This stuff can be dangerous. Thanks for watching this week, Friendly Posture Peeps. I appreciate the support from all you guys. Next week, a video on Callum's back. Stay tuned. Peace out.
Bye.